Now we're going to start looking at a few videos and see how all of this comes together, see how dogs use different signals in the right context. And the aim for you here would be to look out for calming signals, count the number of signals, and try and interpret them. We're going to start with the video of Nishi and Whitey. You've already watched this before. The last time you were looking for distance creating signals. This time look for calming signals. Couple of things to keep in mind. Count the number of signals. If you see, for example, one head turn and two lip licks, then that's 3 signals. So keep count. Make note of how long the entire interaction lasts. And just an additional bit of information here, I did mention this earlier. Nishi is blind in one eye. So see if you can recognize how that actually impacts her communication. Let's get started. So what did you notice? How many signals did you count? Couple of things. Did you notice how much Nishi was freezing? In fact, in some situations, it may also have felt like the video had frozen entirely. Also, the entire interaction lasted just about 52 seconds. So she really doesn't push at all. When Whitey says she's not interested in this interaction, she reads it and she seems to back off quite quickly. And did you notice the pronounced head turn to the right? Because she's blind in her right eye. So there was a very pronounced head turn to the right. If you haven't noticed these things, go ahead and watch the video again and consider maybe slowing down the playback speed. And you can do this for all the videos. Slow down the playback speed and watch the videos in slow motion. Sometimes you'll see more signals that way. Let's move on to the next video. This one is of Chiru and Whitey. And you'll see something interesting in this. Now I'd like for you to pay attention to a few things. One, notice the difference in the duration of the 2 videos and the interactions. 2, notice how Chiru and Nishi are different in the kind of signals they use. And also a quick adding a little bit more context, you'll notice somewhere in the video, you'll notice Chiru do a little dance kind of a thing. That's not a signal, she's just got ants in her feet. So you can ignore that, but count the rest. And count the number of signals that are given by both dogs. Let's watch the video. So what should really be jumping out at you when you watch this video in comparison to the previous one is how different Nishi and Chiru are in the kind of signals they use. Why do you think that is? Why is Chiru using a lot more subtle signals while Nishi not so much? Maybe because Nishi was a bit of an uncoordinated kind of a dog, blind in one eye, and maybe she's just incapable of using subtle signals. Maybe because she's a bigger dog and compared to streeties, she's much bigger and they can get quite nervous around her. So maybe she needs louder signals to get through to them. And remember what I told you about dark dogs and blinking. A dog like Nishi, if she blinks, is barely visible. Whereas a little licking of the lips, very, very visible when a pink tongue comes out in a dark dog. Of course, Nishi doesn't use that because of her accident, she has an injury. So there are certain limitations, there are certain requirements, and therefore her signals are different from Chiru's. And that really is the point of learning social interactions. The point of socialization is to learn how best to express ourselves. This is true of human beings too. You and I probably, if you have learned the same language, probably have the same set of tools at our disposal. But I might express myself better through gestures and storytelling. You might express yourself better by listing facts, maybe drawing pictures, maybe your written communication is better. Some people, their silence speaks better and louder. We're each different, and we need to figure out how best to express ourselves given the tools we have at our disposal. And that's the same for dogs too. Most of them are born with these signals. They don't have to be taught. But what they need to learn is how to use these signals, what is appropriate in what context, and how to express themselves so that they're understood and heard. And this is not something we can teach them. This is something that they need to learn through good social interactions. Not through you don't want them learning it the hard way and being in bad company and learning the wrong lessons really. What we want for them is to have good social interactions, dogs that are modeling good behavior for them. Of course, they need to engage with dogs of their own age, especially young dogs, but they do need some older mentors too. Juveniles don't are not great mentors, so dogs under 24 months, they're not great mentors. So while it's good to have your dog interact with juveniles, really the best lessons learned are going to be from those older dogs that are gentle, patient, good with communication themselves. I use the company of street dogs for my own dogs. Street dogs are really good at communication, and we've seen that they're so good at teaching this to their own family. They're so good to such a great extent that I sometimes feel that they're way better than our pet dogs when it comes to how well they're able to communicate, which kind of makes sense. I suppose a dog is in the best place to model good behavior to another dog on what it means to be a good dog and what it means to have good dog communication. We can't really play that role. So that's why I look for situations where my dogs can make friends with other nice, polite street dogs, and then I just allow the magic to happen. If you don't have access to street dogs, then you can still look for other mentors, but keep in mind you need to cherry pick the mentors, especially when they're in the learning phase. You want good mentors, you want good lessons learned. You also need to put them in the right environment for it, a calm environment. I'll talk a little bit more about why that is important in the next video. It'll become evident to you. The other thing that I feel should really have jumped out at you is the duration. So this video lasted all of 18 seconds, and the previous one 52 seconds. Look at how quickly these dogs are responding to Whitey's message of discomfort. They're not pushing her. They try to befriend her, but when Whitey says, nope, I'm not interested, they're backing off really quickly. I see that in sharp contrast with how human beings respond to these signals, especially distance creating signals. We push them a lot more, a lot longer, and I can understand why dogs then end up escalating. So I would like for you to go back again and look for instances of dogs giving distance creating signals to humans and see if you can contrast that with what you've seen here. See if you can see human beings being able to recognize the rules of the signaling system and recognize why dogs end up escalating. Can you see the paths of escalation? Just remember a point to note here though, don't put dogs willingly in situations where they need to give distance creating signals. That would be unfair because it's really an unpleasant internal experience for them. That's why I keep saying look for situations that is playing out on its own, or look for videos that have already been shot and analyze those, and don't really put animals in that. I don't think I have to tell you that, but I'm just going to leave that there. And with that, once you're done with that, come back and we'll watch the next one, which is a really fascinating video actually. It's one of my favorites. So I'll take you through that. We're going to look at a video of Chiru and Blackie. Blackie is the black dog here. I'm clearly not very creative with my names. So the backstory here is that Chiro and Blackie didn't really get along very well. Again, Blackie is a free-ranging community dog, and they've had a lot of shouting matches. But for some reason, on this occasion, they decided that they're going to try and work something out. Chiro decides to take the lead here, you'll see that, and Blackie seems to be open to it. So I'm going to call out the signals here because they're going to happen so quickly. But what I'd like for you to do is, once you're done watching it, try to go back to it, put me on mute, maybe slow down the playback speed and watch again and count again and see if you can see several of these signals, or hopefully more too. Let's watch. So you can see just the approach right there. Chiro is quite slow, licking of the lips, lick, lick. Don't worry, this will get clearer. Body turn, head turn, lick, 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 dipping of the head. And you can see Blackie completely frozen over there. Head turns, blinking, lick, lick, dipping head, sniffing, body turn, head dip again, lick, lick, paw lift. And notice how tight the muscles are. This is a very tense conversation between these two. Head turns and that curved approach, you saw that at the beginning. And Blackie frozen. Lots of head turns. There are probably more blinking here that we can't see. Lick, lick again. Dipping the head. Body turn by Blackie and a paw lift. Head turn by Chiro. Head dip, sniff. Lick, 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 lick. Moving really slowly, moving in slow motion, paw lift, body turn, blink, lick, and walking away for a bit. They're not done yet, but this was incredibly tense. So what does one need to do? There you go, peeing, stress sign, we spoke about that. Now approach from a different angle, still in a curve. There's a paw lift, head dip, head dip. We did see a few licking from Blackie earlier. Body turn again, lick again, walk away again, break it off for a bit again, try again from a different angle, slow approach, head turn, and it is done. And notice why it ends. I love this video. Somebody once saw this and said it looks like Chiro is a ballerina and you're seeing a dance, and it really does look like that. I absolutely love it. A few things really jump out at me about this. Number one, just the volume of the signals that are there here. And when I look at it, I realize sometimes people learn about calming signals and say, can we go and teach this to our dogs? I don't see it as possible. Look at the number of signals that were exchanged. How would we know? How would we know what signal is supposed to follow which? What signal is meant to be used? How many of it? What is the response required, and what is this dog's comeback? These are things that we can't really figure out, and that's why I say that this is something dogs need to figure out on their own. The second thing that stands out to me is, did you notice how finely balanced this whole thing was? I can't imagine the whole conversation having happened if we were right there next to the dogs, having the dogs on the leash, saying something. In fact, when this video was being shot, I was not actually there. My husband Uttam shot it, and I had gone down the hill and I was walking up and I saw him shooting. He was holding Nishi back. He didn't even want to let Nishi approach. He was holding Nishi back and shooting this, and he turned and he looked at me and he just motioned to me that I had to keep quiet, and he pointed out, and we both sat and watched this whole thing like we were watching a wildlife video of two animals in the wild interacting, and a peep from us might have ruined this. Did you notice why the whole interaction ended? It ended prematurely. And if you paid attention, you can go back and look at the video. A young dog, Oscar, comes bounding down the hill and the rustling of the leaves, and it's at a distance actually, but it broke up this communication. Something that little broke it up because this was such a tense conversation. So if dogs are having these sensitive conversations, tense conversations. They need the right environment for it. They need the right space for it. And that kind of brings me to the third point, the way we do socialization. We don't usually give them this kind of space. It's usually done in dog parks where there are so many other dogs of different temperaments running and barking all over the place. We are right next to them, talking, handling the leash maybe. I won't be surprised when, I'm not surprised when communication fails in those situations. It makes sense. And then we label these dogs as reactive dogs and they need behavior modification and they're sent off to some kind of a class. When clients would come to me with this complaint that their dog has been labeled reactive at the dog park, I ask them, is your dog really asocial? Does your dog have no friends? Does your dog really not know how to communicate? And the answer most times, not always of course, but most times the answer is, no, my dog does have a few friends. A few great friends actually. It's just he doesn't do too well in the dog park. And I don't see that as a problem. His social needs are being met. He has social skills. He's just not good in that busy, frenzied environment. I can understand that because it's a bit like asking me to enjoy myself in a large, loud party or a club. I used to manage when I was younger, but I don't enjoy it anymore and I'm getting worse at it. Several of the students who attend my class, dog people, also tend to be like this and many of them can relate to it. If you see me in a party, I'm probably going to be the one standing right at the corner with a glass of wine, almost wishing that I could hide behind this glass of wine because that's not working for me. My idea of social interaction is a quiet restaurant or sitting in PJs with my bestie, still a glass of wine maybe, but in a quiet place and having long chats. And that meets my social needs adequately. I'm not socially deprived. It meets my social needs in a way that works for me. And that's the same thing that we need to realize about dogs. This is the whole point about being a social species. That means that our social interactions are rich, nuanced, varied, and very individualistic, and all of us get our connection in different ways, and that needs to be appreciated and there needs to be room for it. But for some reason, there seems to be a unrealistic expectation that dogs are not like that they are all the same and that they should all be fine, put in a novel situation with novel dogs and they should just spontaneously burst into play. But that's not really the case. That's not what we see when we do ethological studies on free-ranging dogs. We do not see that behavior in street dogs at all. Street dogs do have incredibly wonderful social relationships, lots of friendships. In fact, they tend to have more friends and more social connections than our pet dogs do too. I would say that they tend to be more social in general. But that still does not mean that they would accept a new dog in their midst and just spontaneously burst into play. They are sometimes hostile. They're sometimes curious, but it takes time for them to build friendships. There's a lot of social decorum that needs to be maintained. And once all of that has been adequately done, then your friendship takes shape. And then they maintain beautiful friendships. It's just a joy to watch. But there is nuance there, and there are preferences there. And I think it should impress upon us that what we need to create for our dogs is the opportunity to take their preferences into account, create the right environment for them so that they can engage in social connections that are meaningful to them and bring them joy. Because at the end of the day, isn't that what we want for them? Isn't this about socialization? Isn't it about social interaction for them? And not sort of meeting our expectation of what we have pictured in our head of this perfect dog or the ideal dog or the prototype dog, and meet our expectation of what we want to see. Don't we want to be, isn't the end goal for them to have that need of connection and social interaction met for their mental and emotional well-being? And wouldn't that happen best when it is done in their way. If I were forced to go to a party because my social needs are to be met, I would be miserable. I would get my needs met best if I could have the chat in PJs at home with dim lights and great music playing. And I think our dogs too deserve to have experience the joy of the right kind of connect for them. So I'm going to leave you with that thought. Think about it. Try to observe how different dogs engage in social relationships. And this is where having access to free-ranging dogs really matters. But other dogs too, dog parks, you can see this. You can see preferences. You can see dogs that like being there, dogs that don't like being there, dogs that are obnoxious and bullies and haven't really learned the right way of doing things. You can see all that. So pay attention to it. And see if you can draw notes and see those personality types. See if you can relate to some of those dogs, or people you know can help you relate to these dogs. So this one is of Nishi and Jack the horse. Now here, Nishi is the smaller animal. So you can see that she's nervous. You'll hear her growling. And Jack is giving a lot of signals that look very similar to the ones that we've been seeing, and the ones that Nishi in particular has been giving to the smaller streeties. So let's see how this looks. So you can see the head turns, the curving, and Nishi is nervous. You can hear the growl. She gets quite nervous here, and immediately there's that head turn, and Jack is not ignoring her. So look at his eye. He's actually looking at her. He's quite invested in this conversation, this interaction. But there's that head turn. He's frozen. More head turns. Dipping of the head, much like we saw the dogs do. This is a horse version. And watch the front left leg. There. Up like the paw lift. Head turn, blinking, more head turns. And more dipping of the head. This video gives me the goosebumps. I realize that it's animals of two different species that are communicating with each other. When we start observing it, my students have observed these signals in a lot of other animals. Cows, cats, pigs. You know, in India, there are cows on the street as well. So when you're stuck in traffic, I tend to do that, just observe them. And it's documented. There is a book out there that talks about calming signal in horses. So I start feeling like many animals seem to be in on this. And we seem to be the only ones who have been left out of this party. They're all talking to each other and we've been left out. And what's really endearing about dogs is that they seem to be quite keen on inviting us back into the party. They use the signal a lot on us. And I feel like if we took the opportunity to observe and learn from them, it may open up a whole world of communicating with animals to us and help us see them in a completely new light. And to me, that is the most exciting part about learning these signals and trying to understand them.